Right, so it's no secret to anyone that Murder Drones is my favourite show. It's what this channel was built on, I spent a good 3 years of my life focused on it, and it accounts for the greatest amount of money I've spent on a single IP. I am amongst the most knowledgeable people regarding this show on the planet. I love this show and I love making videos on it. Why then have I only managed a meager 4 videos in the past half year, instead choosing to focus on the Amazing Digital Circus and other shows that I don't like nearly as much as this one? Well, that is because the Murder Drones IP has been horrendously mishandled since the release of Fight Till I'm Good Enough, and it has turned me away from making content about the show. This video is going to be covering 3 things that have happened over the course of the last 6 months. The first is the failure of Oni Press to effectively deliver the second issue of the comic to the people who purchased the digital copy. The second is the horrendous state of that comic at the moment. And the third is a recent string of shorts promoting a new line of figurines. Let's take a closer look at the problems with all of these. Now, it's possible that a good chunk of people didn't even know what was happening with this comic, as there's been no official statement from Glitch other than the email sent out to backers of the Kickstarter, but about 5% of the people who bought and paid for the digital version of the comic did not receive issue 2 until last week, when it was released along with issue 3 because of an apparent problem with their distributor. Ignoring the fact that you managed to get these emails out just fine, that is a horrendous amount of error to be making with this. There's over 1,000 people now who didn't get the product they spent money on, assuming their number is accurate. Now, thankfully with the transfer of this comic to a more robust distributor in Neon Ichiban, this issue has been resolved, but the fact that it happened at all is mind-boggling. This isn't like a live stream or a merch release where you don't know how many people will be interested. You have a count of exactly how many people are needed to receive this package, and you still picked a distributor who couldn't do the job properly. But Uncom, you may be thinking, this issue with the comics happened a couple of months ago. Why didn't you just make a video about the second release and mention this issue then? Well, that's because it happened to me too. I have only just gotten access to the second issue last week. I'm not being funny here. I paid $200 for this. The least you can do is make sure the easiest part of my order actually gets to me on time. Ultimately though, this would not be a massive problem if the comic itself was worth it. Sure, the wait is frustrating, but it's ultimately very similar to the episode 9 release of the Amazing Digital Circus. I'm willing to wait for a high quality product or pay more to see it early. The problem is, this comic is not high quality at all. The whole idea of this comic, the whole pitch, was a faithful adaptation of the original 8 episodes into comic form, created by experienced writers and illustrators. Now, is it faithful to the story of the show? Yes, but there's a line between being faithful to the source material and just ripping parts of it out and sticking them into the new thing, without much consideration for if that needs to be done or if it even works. A perfect example of this is these strange recap sessions that Uzi and N do via text at the start of issues 2 and 3. Neglecting the fact that this completely goes against everything you were taught in high school English about show don't tell, they include pieces of information that are canon to the show but are completely unnecessary to the story here. Eldritch J's name is one of these. It never comes up again after episode 2, and none of the characters in the show even use the name. The only reason this name exists is because the merch team needed something to call it. So why do you establish it in this text bubble twice? It's redundant and tells the audience something they already know more than the writers. In plenty of other cases, the writers just rip lines of dialogue straight out of the show and shove them into place in the comic. This also doesn't work, as comic writing is fundamentally different to show writing. Comics require dialogue to be much more concise to prevent them from just becoming a regular book, and that is how the majority of this is written. So when you have all of these short, snappy sentences that are then randomly interlaced with a paragraph you read in Elsie Lovelock's voice, it's incredibly jarring. And that sucks, because when the writers do take some liberties with the story, they can make it flow better than it did in the original. Prime example for this was the way they connect Khan's involvement in episodes 2 and 3 with the second issue. The teacher telling Khan that he needs to be a better parent and then offering an actual reason for him to chaperone instead of it just being a cheesy joke with no setup at the start of episode 3 is a legitimately good writing decision. It just feels like they've shackled themselves to the canon story and refused to deviate from it even for a little bit. Whether this is a self-inflicted choice or one pushed on them by the Glitch execs, I don't know, but Glitch have always given their creatives plenty of leash to make their own stories in the past, so I can't really see them constricting Oni all that much. That means they've done this to themselves. They have chosen not to try and make a good adaptation of the show, instead they wanted to make a bad copy of it, and I'm now feeling the greatest amount of buyer's remorse I have ever felt. My name is in that book of thank yous for everyone who backed the project, and I'm not sure if I still want it to be there. But the number one criticism of this comic has got to be the pacing. There were lots of people who already said that Murder Drones was too fast. I personally am not of that opinion because I like to watch the episodes multiple times to catch all the details, but it definitely teetered on that being a flaw. The comic has even less time to get through that same already very fast story, and it does so by rushing through it at a record pace. Episodes 2 and 3 of the show took a combined 40 minutes. The comic only has 24 pages to cover the same story. It's just not enough. On top of that, I have an issue with the way the physical release is occurring. See, Kickstarter backers like myself who purchased a physical version of this comic won't be getting it until the end of the year, but physical versions of the first 3 issues are already available in comic stores all across America. Why is this happening? Surely you'd want to focus on the people who actually made the comic possible first before showing it to people who didn't take a risk on this project. At least with the Amazing Digital Circus in theaters, the people who are paying more and taking a gamble on the product get to receive it first. This is the opposite way around, and it makes no sense to me why they're doing this. But that's enough on the comic for now. Let's move on to the other thing Glitch has been doing with Murder Drones recently, that being another merch drop. This set of Animinies and other assorted items is themed after the Living Tombstone collaboration and post-episode 8 in general. There's much more love for some of the minor characters, including the Dole and Brayden fans, and we even have a new generation of animates since the old ones are all worth $500 on eBay now. My question regarding this release is, why is it happening now? There's nothing particularly special about this month. It isn't really the anniversary of anything, the comic isn't ending, we don't have any updates on future projects, there really is no reason for this merch drop. Before anyone starts creaming down in the comment section, no, this is not an indicator of Season 2. Liam Vickers is in no way associated with Glitch anymore, and you can't make more of a show without its creator. There is a possibility for something that could happen though. After the merch announcement, I went over to Glitch's website to see if there was anything I missed regarding this release since it felt so out of place. That's when I stumbled across this job listing. Head of Games. Now, one does not simply advertise a position like this without plans to make games based off the IPs you have, and I would say that out of all the shows Glitch has at the moment, Murder Drones is the one that's most convertible into a game. I mean, aside from the one with game in the title, but you aren't risking that financial decision without the pilot released yet. If that is the case and they're soon to announce that a Murder Drones game is in the works, you are more than welcome to disregard the rest of this video. If, however, that does not happen, I have some choice words about this merch drop. It's unnecessary and a cash grab. Murder Drones fans do not need more merch. We are covered up in merch. I can grab my N-Dog and my Fat Fuck, pull on my J-Stockings, slide on my V-shirt and cover it with an N-hoodie and hat adorned with absolute solver pins, go to class with my Nori backpack in tow that has 4 different acrylics dangling from it, and write notes with my JC Jensen pen before selling my limited edition Tessa Animates for $700 to some loser on the internet. We have enough merch for this show. At this point, they aren't even coming up with new ideas. When you've made so much merch that the idea of remastering old standees doesn't sound like a completely ridiculous idea, then it's time to lay off. And for what? You can't say this is going towards funding more Murder Drones content because there isn't any more Murder Drones content to fund. The only Murder Drones animation we've seen all year is the stuff surrounding the merch drop. And honestly, I'd take more of that. If you give us a mini-series of shorts set in the post-episode 8 Murder Drones universe, I would be down to watch that. That is how desperate we are for more content with this show. But right now, there is nothing that justifies Glitch charging us for more pieces of plastic. The merch release is a mess, the comic release is dysfunctional, and the comic itself turns the show into an absolute joke. But that's all I've got for today. Thank you all for watching, and have a good one.